Hello everyone. So after quite a long interval, I'm going to do another Wargaming update. Those of you who have been long-term viewers of my channel will know that I paint really slowly anyway, and what I tend to do nowadays is have a lot of things on the go, just so that I can have a break from one thing and move on to another. So I think I've got something 12 to 14 what I call trays, just boards with figures on them, different subjects, and I sort of rotate my way through them, putting a little bit of paint on each, and then move on to the next one. And because, as I say, I paint really slowly anyway, so nothing ever seems to get finished. But as it happens, several things have come to a conclusion more or less at the same time. So I now, having not had anything to show you for quite a long time, I now have a lot of things to show you and talk about. So this is going to be another one of my really long videos. I'm not going to apologise for that. I like long videos myself. So this is I'm putting this out for people to watch who like the sort of things that I like to watch on YouTube. That's the way it is. So first up, we have some figures from Freikorps here, American Civil War. Freikorps, now owned and sold through QRF, or Quick Reaction Force. More on that in a moment. First thing I'm going to say though is that I've got out of the habit as well of showing you figures on the turntable. That's because I find the noise of the turntable going round a little bit annoying when I listen back to my videos. So what I'm going to do, because you can't see these figures in any real detail at this distance, on on a still camera, I'm going to put them on the turntable, film them, and then overlay those images onto this, so that you hear my commentary, but you're looking at a better version of the figures, a closer view of them, so you get a bit more idea of the detail of them. So that should be happening now. So Freikorps, I wouldn't be surprised if not many people out there are familiar with the range, which is a great pity, because they have been around a very long time. I started purchasing Freikorps figures back in the mid 1980s. At that time they were owned and operated out of Bangor in Northern Ireland, County Down, and they have survived right up to this day, so over 30 years, and I really think they are the best American Civil War figures out there. I love them. I love their character, I love the poses, I love the huge range that they have, which includes all kinds of speciality sort of troops, shall we say. Well, not speciality, but distinctive regiments, that kind of thing. They're particularly good on the early period of the American Civil War, when the uniforms hadn't become so uniform. Sorry, that's, it sounds like a tautology, but what I mean is that hadn't become so standardized, so regiments had their own distinctive looks. Things like there was a New Hampshire regiment, I think it was, that had a very distinctive coal scuttle headgear. They do all that. They do all kinds of things. unfortunately, at the minute, you're not able to view their range online. I'll talk about a little bit about that more in a moment. But yeah, and they're quite small for 15mm. You know, not drastically out of line with other ranges, but they're on the small side, maybe similar size to Peter Pig. But the faces and the just the sheer amount of character that they have, and I like the poses as well. I like the the how well they capture the human form and the human shape and just general postures and so on. They're just absolutely brilliant. At that time, back in the 1980s, when I started buying them, unfortunately, they were made out of a very brittle metal, and it was quite common to receive broken figures in the post, particularly rifles, muskets and rifles snapped off. They often came, with quite severe damage, and I think that really put a damper on people's enthusiasm for them right from the start. After a year or so, they did amend the metal they were using, made it more robust and less brittle, and that's what these figures are. But I bought these figures relatively recently, only a sort of year or two ago. Ever since, their metal has been fine. But I think they had already damaged their reputation too much, and the company was passed on, the range was passed on to QRF, Quick Reaction Force. Now they have stoically been supplying these figures, for probably 20 years now. Unfortunately, it seems as though the guy who owned QRF, his name was Jeff. I've got Facebook page up on the screen here at the minute, so I've just been reading the latest news. Yeah, I don't know what his surname was, but Jeff Titchener maybe. Anyway, he retired, stepped back some time ago now, passed the range on again to a new owner, and there's been a lot of acrimony between himself and the new owner. And recently I went to the website, the QRF website, and it was absolute chaos. If you wanted to buy any of these figures, if you're interested in getting hold of them, the website was almost unfathomable. It was just really difficult to navigate it. And as I say, the Freicol range is colossal. They do far more than just the American Civil War. And the new proprietor had put all the figures from the 19th century under one title. So there was something like, I think it was 58 pages on the website just with 19th century Freicol figures alone. And it recommended using filters, but the filters weren't appropriate to the way you would want to search. So you couldn't search for American Civil War or anything like that. It was just awful, absolutely awful. But today, when I went to have a look again, the website has been disabled, and I've found on Facebook now, which is an open page that I can read because I don't belong to Facebook, but Jeff has put up the story of how the new owner, who was called Harry Dowden, hasn't really looked after things at all, and basically it reads, with effect from the 5th of April 2025, Harry Dowden T/A QRF models no longer holds a license to produce the following ranges which are owned by me. And he lists in that all of these QRF ranges of modern vehicles and aircraft and so on, as well as all the Freikorps stuff and the Airwolf 1200th air range. He's got no idea where the masters are at the moment, and any production from this point is piracy in breach of copyright. So there you are, you couldn't get more acrimonious than that. But it does mean, unfortunately, that possibly Freikorps has disappeared. It's the very sad end to a wonderful range. I hope it can be rescued. I hope the masters can be found, returned to Jeff, so that he can sell them on to a more reliable purchaser. But as things stand at the moment, that's the end of Freikorps. So this goes back to my whole so I've discussed this many times with people in the past on YouTube, my whole philosophy about buying figures when they're available. Fortunately, I've still got a little bit in my left lead mountain that I can work on, and I've already got fairly large armies anyway for the American Civil War. So I've got it in time, but I always say buy things when they're there, because you never know what's going to happen, and this has been a very sudden and dramatic demise of the range. They're certainly not available at the moment. I mean, another acrimonious bone of contention recently I noticed was with the Tiny Wargames, the terrain mat company, who passed the range on, and then there was a round robin sort of email from the new owner saying that he was having all kinds of legal issues with the previous owner, whose name I forget, the first name, his Christian name was Richard. Always found him a little bit chaotic. Haven't got a clue what was going on there, but I overheard, picked up on Billy Goat Wargaming, Sean, just dropped some, off the cuff remark into one of his videos recently about how this guy Richard is banned from his channel. So there's clearly some kind of issue going on there with him. But I noticed all that website disappeared, and Tiny War Games has now returned under a new title of Big War Games. So don't know what's going on there at all, but the email that the potentially new owner sent round was very derogatory. That's all I'll say. But anyway, in terms of Freikorps, just love them to bits, and really hope they can be saved. And just by coincidence happened to have been painting these up recently. I got into the mood for doing something American Civil War again after the sad passing of Ian at the Diomede F-76, I think it was. I can't remember the name of his YouTube channel now, but he passed away at the end of last year, and it reminded me of my shared enthusiasm for the American Civil War. So I thought I would start painting up some figures again. Anyway, but this, as I said, this video is going to go on for ages, so let's move on to something else now before I waffle on too long. Same thing again then, you should be looking at these figures on the turntable whilst I give a commentary on a separate video. So these are Fire Force 15 miniatures, which in the UK are available from Old Glory. Don't know if that applies to the Old Glory website in the US. They are Rhodesians for modern African wars. Now, as many of you will know, this year we are expecting the release of the third edition of Peter Pig's set of rules AK-47. This time round they are called the People's Edition, I think. So the Peter Pig have brought out a few new models and so on to complement the new set of rules, or the new edition of an old set of rules. Got me in mind to paint up a new force, so thought I would do a colonial settlers force. It's quite possible to do that from Peter Pig's extensive range, but these drew my attention and I thought I would buy them. I thought they were quite an interesting subject, and so my colonial settlers force is sort of based on Rhodesia, but if you're a fan of AK-47, you'll know it's more of a kind of imaginations type game. So I can turn these really into any sort of generic force that I want. They are, I said earlier about the Freikorps being similar size to Peter Pig, which is on the small side. These are definitely larger than the Peter Pig figures. Not huge, again, not a huge difference, but noticeable if you put them side by side. So I'm a little bit kind of stymied now. I don't know what to do, whether to buy more of these figures, because this is the total of their sort of regular infantry. They do another pack which I'm working on at the moment, which is command and weapons basically, so mortars, things like that, and a radio operator. But yeah, I think I'm going to have to get some more of these, because I definitely will need more infantry. And really happy with the way they turned out. Looking forward to the new set of rules. I'm not necessarily going to be playing it that much. I'm still playing the original AK-47 Republic set of rules. I don't think I've even tried a game of AK-47 Reloaded, which came out many years ago now. I just don't think AK-47, the original, can be surpassed. I mean, you can't get it in printed form any longer. So, you can get it in PDF, but not in the original printed form. So I'm glad I've got that. I might even go as far as to say that it is my favourite set of Wargames rules of all time. So yeah, I might give the new version, which is a gridded version, a go, but I don't see the need to. I don't think the original can be improved on. I don't see the need. Never saw the need to tinker with it. That's not to be argumentative about it. Peter Pig have got absolute right to do what they want with their rules, and they are very keen nowadays on gridded systems. So fair play to them. It's just not so much my cup of tea, especially when I enjoy the original set of rules so much. So yeah, on the subject of building up a force though, would you believe it, the Peter Pig do some vaguely suitable vehicles. In fact, the Rhodesians even had, at one point, they even had 10 T-55 tanks, which had been passed on to them from the South Africans who captured them probably in Mozambique, or where did they? I think they intervened in Angola. Yeah, I think maybe they captured them in Angola, but they found their way into the Rhodesian army. You know, which is really why AK-47 suits this imaginations kind of, you know, style anyway, because modern wars in Africa were so, you know, topsy-turvy and chopping. You know, who would have thought that the Cubans would ever have been present and fought in Ethiopia? But they were. You know, that you just got those strange, you know, configurations of forces fighting. So AK-47 works in that respect, because the weirdest sort of mix of troop types and equipment that you can think of did actually happen, you know, or often did happen. Fact is stranger than fiction. Yeah, but in terms of trying to get hold of some vehicles now, Peter Pig are a little bit limited. So my next port of call would have been, would you believe it, QRF. I have got a few QRF modern vehicles. So we're back to that same problem now, that all those models are unavailable until the legal wrangling is sorted out and the masters are found and so on. So I've ordered, well, I've received them now, some figures from Butler's Printed Models. More on that in a future video, because I've got to paint them up yet, so I won't talk too much about that. But the Butler's Printed Models do have a wide range of suitable model vehicles, including things like the Crocodile, the armoured personnel carrier, and a version of the Panhard which was called the Eland 90, which is a kind of a Panhard with a sort of heavier gun on it, things like that. So I bought a few of those and I'll get those painted up in the future. Yeah, better move on to something else. So that's my Fire Force Rhodesian figures for AK-47 that I've painted up so far. Next up, and remaining on the continent of Africa, we have these 28mm figures from North Star. Now, these were originally part of a Kickstarter. I believe it was the Kickstarter, or North Star called it Nick Starters, for the Wolves' Death in the Dark Continent. So they're two separate figures and they weren't available to the general public. And I was waiting years, literally years, for them to emerge on sale to the general public. And they finally did last year sometime, I think about the middle of last year, so about a year ago now. I've always admired them, always wanted some in my Wargames collection, even though I haven't got a suitable army to put them in really, simply because they are such a rare subject for wargaming figures. They basically come under the sort of generic description of Knights of the Savannah, which is actually, I'm sure that a book that is published, I've got it in my collection, that's I think it's published by the British Museum, African Arms and Armour by Christopher Spring, actually has a modern day photograph of one of these Hausa horsemen from Niamey in Niger, dressed in very decorative apparel, and the horse's quilted armour is equally gaudily dressed in very sort of jazzy styles and patterns. Originally I was planning to paint them up in that kind of style, and you'll see one figure does have a fairly sort of mixed pattern kind of adornment on the armour, but A, I found it a little bit time consuming and difficult to do, and B, I'm not sure historically whether they would have been that gaudily decorated. Courted armour on horses and indeed on warriors is kind of common all the way through the Sud, so the sort of south of the Sahara. So from countries like Niger on the sort of western side of Africa, right across to the east to the Sudan. And the general kind of reporting of them is that they were striped. They had lots of them were patterned with stripes. There's one example of some armour taken at the Battle of Omdurman in 1898. So here we're talking about from a dervish army, and that is quite jazzily decorated. I've got a picture of it in front of me here, and I'm talking, and it's sort of lots of reds, yellows, and blue and black in sort of triangular shapes. So that, you know, a little bit more regulated than the sort of you know, more mixed up pattern. But I think partly for ease of painting and partly because I thought it was probably more historically accurate, I've used quite a lot of freedom of expression, but I've gone for a lot of more simple patterns or straight stripes and lines and some diamond shapes and so on, and settled for that. And yeah, pretty happy with the way they turned out. They're very chunky figures, lots of metal in them. The horse body is separate, and there are two versions of the head. You can see both versions in the front rank there. So there's a sort of more armoured version, and there's a sort of padded, quilted kind of head. And equally, the human body is separate from the spear and from the head. And there are two choices of head, very much derivative of that photo that I was mentioning in the Christopher Spring's book. So I'm sure there's even a chapter in the book called Knights of the Savannah, so I'm sure they did get a lot of their inspiration from that. So two choices of head for the horse and for the human, and there's also, although it may not be quite so apparent, there are two choices of spear. And again, this is a sort of nod to the uniqueness of this sort of branch of African cavalry, that a double-headed spear was quite common, and the spear that looks as though it's just sort of been, it's, you know, slightly badly cast and a bit chunky, is actually a double-headed spear rather than a single-headed spear, and that was capable of piercing chainmail and so on. So it's another feature of African weaponry. So I just thought they were interesting figures to have. Not sure they're ever going to find their way into any of my war games. Maybe potentially, you know, against the French Foreign Legion, but then again, I haven't got any other figures in an army, you know, suitable to put them in. So you never know. But I enjoyed painting them up, and I've always wanted them, so I was glad to get hold of them. The other thing that I wasn't sure about, and I think I've made the right decision, was that you might notice that on the bottom of the spears there's a sort of round ball. Now that could have been, I know for instance Wargaming's Foundry do sometimes have that sort of, it's like, I don't know, sort of residue from the casting on the bottom of the spear. So I did wonder whether it was you know, a feature of the figure or a bit of artifact that I should have cut off. But I left it on in the end because I wasn't sure, didn't want to damage a figure. I suppose I can always cut it off at some later date if I learn it's a mistake. But it struck me that it's probably a counterbalance to the heavy head of the spear. So it made sense to me. So yeah, that's all I've got really to say on these figures. On to the next thing. Right, now this is part of my ongoing marathon effort to paint up 2 bags of 50 planes each from the Plastic Soldier company that I bought quite a while back now. I don't know what possessed me really. I think I only intended originally to get 1 bag, and then discovered there weren't any ME109s in the bag and thought that was just a random chance. So I bought a 2nd bag, only to discover that none of the bags that they were selling in this offer had ME109s. So I ended up with 100 planes from British and German planes. Never going to get them all on the table at one time, but I'm determined to paint them all. Don't have to rush at it. Just do it in my usual slow style. So these are 16 Heinkel bombers. If I haven't said that already. The transfers, I put a lot of decals on them, and I got the decals from Pendraken, but they're originally an American brand called Scale Specialities. Now that sent me down a rabbit hole as well, because the more decals you put on something, the more you kind of distinguish the aircraft as being a particular one during the Second World War. So I had to be careful, because of my obsessive nature with this sort of detail. I had to be careful to only put markings on that would have been on planes that took part in the Battle of Britain. So the Scale Specialities do have on their sheet of decals, they do have some that for units that were in Russia, and each sheet only had enough for 4. I think it was 4. Yeah, it was 4 aircraft, or if you confine yourself to those limitations. But you could get permutations of that to make it enough for 8. So I ended up having to buy 4 sheets of the decal. 4 sheets, so that I had enough for 16 aircraft. And then even then had to cut some of the lettering up to switch it around from plane to plane, being careful to still have historically accurate lettering on the planes, so that none of the planes have the same lettering on them. So it was a bit of a faff. I got there in the end, but to my dismay, I also got into thinking a little bit more about colours and so on, and markings. I think you can see down here on some of these planes, they've got these pink bars on the wings. Others have got pink bars on the fins, and some have them on one side, some have them on the other, some have them on both. To this day, understanding those markings, if you explore the internet, it's just conjectural. So I'm not sure I've got them on correctly, but the theory was, two different things. That they were used to allow the planes to identify their correct positions in formation, so that if they saw a plane, say, that had a marking on its port side, they knew they had to be starboard of that. Yeah. And if a plane had markings on both, they knew they should be behind it. That kind of thing. That was the theory. And B, why on earth was it such an effeminate colour of pink? And the theory behind that was that they originally painted them red, and found that it didn't stand out enough to be noticeable in the air, so they then overpainted the red with white, but the red showed through the white, making it pink. Those are the two. It's all conjecture. The thing that isn't conjecture, though, was that I did manage to find a book which I'm going to show you with all my other book purchases at the end of this long video. But it was called Markings and Camouflage Systems of Luftwaffe Aircraft in World War II by Carl Reese Jr. It was published, I think, in 1962, so it's quite an authoritative text. Lots of useful information to it in it. I'll show it to you later. But to my horror, I then discovered, and I'm not going to change it now because I've been doing it for years, is that I've always had a tendency to paint red propeller spinners on bombers and yellow ones on Luftwaffe fighters, just because I thought it looked cool. But now I discover that the propeller spinners, if they were coloured, they should have the colour of the staffel, which is the same colour as the first of the four letters on the side. You won't be able to see it at this distance, but there are four letters on the side of the fuselage, and the first one is coloured. There's greens, blues, whites, blacks, and so on, and they should have that colour on. And sometimes they had a dual colour, and that was because the bomber group as well had a specific colour. So you can get, white and red, black and blue, black and green, all kinds of things. I'm not going to go back and change it now. I'm just going to have to leave it, and the purists, will pick me up on it if they ever see it on the tabletop anywhere. Not that they're likely to. But I'll show you that book. As I say, it's a really interesting book. I'll show it to you at the end of this video, and that's all I've got to say about these Hankels, really. I'm currently painting up planes for the Korean War, which I 3D printed myself, and then I'll go back. I've still got, easily 40 or 50 planes from that bargain bag deal to paint up. So a long way to go yet. Okay, now I've also completed quite a lot of scenic items, the biggest of which is I've completed just under 6 feet of wall, which has got a sort of an oriental feel to it. So I'm intending this for use in the Boxer Rebellion games I'm planning, and in particular the table that I want to kind of recreate for the Siege of the Legations in Peking. That scenario won't actually involve a gatehouse, but it will involve a sluice gate, which is this section of wall here, and also a ramp, which I'll show you the other side in a moment, but that's essentially that piece there. The ramp is on the other side. So the way I achieve this, it's kind of a compromise. It's meant to be 28mm size. It just about works for that. The big problem with terrain in general is its kind of footprint on the table. if you're doing a skirmish game, which I'm not for this particular scenario, but if you're doing a skirmish game where one figure represents one man, then buildings take on an immense, if they're to scale, if they're in proportion to that figure, they just become too big, occupy too big a footprint on the table. But consequently, that also means that they are extremely high. So as I say, this is a kind of compromise. So it looks more or less 28mm size. It works. The figures don't look unreasonable next to them. The gate, for instance, is about 2.5 times the height of a figure. In reality, the great gates of Chinese walls would have been a lot higher than that, and the sluice gate equally is about the height of a figure, slightly bigger than the height of a figure. It's probably about 35-40mm high. And what I did, the way I made it was I printed quite a large amount of it on a resin printer. So that kind of section there, going back to about there, I think you can see that on the camera. So going back to about there, that is a printed section of resin. So I printed 2 of those and kind of put them back to back, separated a little bit so there's a hollow space between them, covered that with card and so on. So it's got a greater width, and then raised it up on a styrofoam block to give it greater height and cut kind of shape. So you can see it's quite obvious where the printing ends and my clumsy handicraft begins. But I don't think it looks unreasonable, especially as the lower sections of the wall might get a little bit more worn and deteriorate faster. So it doesn't look unreasonable, I don't think. But it did involve a lot of, especially for the ramp and the sluice gate as well. It did involve a little bit of handwork, clumsy kind of cutting out of shapes and things, and especially as well on the back of the gatehouse, because the gatehouse as printed wouldn't accommodate another bit of printing behind, so I had to make all the wall behind. In fact, let's show you the other side of the wall now. So here's the other side, and all this part here is from styrofoam, so you can probably hear, if I rub my fingernail against it, you can probably hear there's a difference between that and the resin. So even the crenellation, I was quite pleased that I managed to cut some little shapes for the crenellations out and cut so they looked almost identical to the corresponding parts on the resin print. The ramp is there, so you can see a bit bodged, but it'll do as the ramp leading up, and the other part of the other corresponding side of the sluice gate there. So what I'll do now, I'll show you how it's meant to work in this game I'm planning. So I'm going to take the gatehouse out and put some other bits of scenery down. Okay, now here is the map of the table. This is in a really old Miniature Wargames, November 1985, issue number 30. It's the game, you'll know all this if you've been following my channel, but it's the game that was put on by the Staines Wargames Club at Salute back in the 1980s that I've always wanted to copy. So the Mongol wall is along one edge of the table, and then you have the sluice gate more or less in the middle with a canal. It's really a drain or a sewer really. calling it a canal is a really sort of grandiose name for it, running in straight line, you know, bisecting the table with, how many bridges are there? 1, 2, 3 large bridges and 1 small footbridge across it. So that's the kind of the skeleton of the table is what I'm trying to say. So here we go. Let's just show you. So I've got the wall there. Obviously that will be right up at the end of the table, but I put it in the middle there for ease of filming and so on. And I bought these are straight lengths of scenery, so this is meant to be a stream, but I thought it would work as a ditch, a canal ditch. These are from Deep Cut Studio, and I'll have to kind of enhance it a little bit. So I was thinking maybe I've got these lengths of balsa wood, so I was thinking of maybe putting those along the side like that. They're quite flat, turning them into, I could even have it like that, so it does makes the stream slightly narrower, makes it look a bit more in proportion, turning that into a sort of paved kind of bit of scenery to give the canal an edge. I have to watch that it doesn't warp too much as I paint it and the paint dries and so on, but I thought I'll experiment with that, see how that goes. And yeah, you can see the ramp there. The rest of it is just plain wall. There will be some ladders about here to give access to the wall, scaling ladders and so on, to give access to the wall to the boxes and so on. So there'll be fighting going along the wall top there. And then I've got a few other bits and pieces that I've purchased or printed. Let me show you those. Okay, this is a 3D print. The files came from they got a weird name, but they do mainly Japanese stuff, but I thought this would work. I think they're called something like 3D, oh no, sorry, names escape me. Yeah, I'll have to just skip that. Sure, if you're interested in printing up Japanese style buildings and terrain, you will have come across it, you'll know it. Yeah, so I thought this would do as the footbridge, the smaller of the 4 bridges that go across the canal. So quite pleased with that. And then I printed a couple of small buildings that will do just as, to fill in spaces on the terrain. They might be able to use them inside the legation areas, but they're meant to just be, at the side of streets and so on. So I'll show you those next. Okay, so these are just 2 generic looking dwellings, or sort of lower standard buildings. These are printed as well. They're from the files are from Najevitz Modelbau, who are a brilliant company. I recommend them for a whole wide range of different types of building and so on. This came from there. I think they're called the Asian buildings file. There is a different, similar but different composition of doors and windows building, but you can see from this one that this is just like a mirror image of that file. So it's the same file effectively, although I think they did sell, they did have it. they'd done the mirroring themselves. You didn't have to do it on your own computer. Yeah, so there's not much to say about them really, other than it struck me when I was painting them up. These would work for Korea as well. So I've got 20mm figures for the Korean War, so I might print some up at a smaller size, and they can dot the table if I ever get around to playing Korean War games again. Yeah, a few other bits to show you yet. Okay, as well as the stream from Deep Cut Studios, I went on to buy some irregular cobbled walls, 2 boxes of that. Not sure if this will work so well for the Boxer Rebellion. They're a little bit strange anyway, in that they're completely straight. But I thought this might do. If it doesn't, I can always use it for, another period, something else. But so I've got 12 feet of that. You can cut it up into smaller sections, use it as you will, and it does come with 2 sort of semicircles that you can use as well to, put curves in the road and so on. And it's nice stuff because you don't have to worry about it. The roads I've already got, they're constantly curling up and that. But this just lies nice and flat. It's quick and easy to put down and take up again. And this might do for in the game. I haven't decided yet on. I think I'm probably going to have to get a table mat. To make for the surface. This green is won't work at all. This green here won't work at all. But when I do get a suitable playing surface that looks right, has the right sort of colour, and looks like it could be the streets of Old Peking, then I could put these down, and I think they will work as roads. So I got that, and I got one other thing not related to the Boxer Rebellion from Deep Cut Studio while I was making my purchases. So I got another playing mat. This one is, as you may be aware from a previous video where I showed you some panthers that I'd painted up at planes for the Korean War. I'm planning on, playing some aerial combat games set in Korea, and this one is called MiG Alley. So I thought it was brilliant as a sort of gives you an idea just of what the features look like. Turn it over. Very very deceptive to the eye. It almost looks like you're high above the North Korea there. The mat's called MiG Alley, so it's obviously aimed at that period of conflict. So I thought that would do very nicely when I get some. I've got some panthers that I've already shown you. I'm currently working on some sabres, and then I'll print and paint some MiGs, and then I'll be able to have a game of that. And there's also almost forgot, but I've got another few little scenic items that are suitable for, well, I've not printed them, I purchased them for the Boxer Rebellion, but they would do for a lot of different periods. I'll show you those next. I think I said I purchased these for the Boxer Rebellion game, but that's not strictly true. I've actually had them quite a long time. They're from Charlie Foxtrot Models, and I realised I had them sitting waiting for me to do something with them. I originally got them for the game of Congo, because I thought they might work as kind of, I think there's one scenario where you have a camp, and I thought they might work as, you know, material in the camp, as sort of an objective or just as a bit of decoration. But then I never got around to painting them up, and then I'm looking for things basically to make barricades, you know, that represent barricades in this game. So I thought these would, you know, would do to mix in with other items. So Charlie Foxtrot models, I think he's announced he's retiring next year. So after 2026, sometime in 2026, they won't be available any longer. So I might pick up some more. He usually attends the show in Plymouth in February. I might pick up some more from him then. There are three separate lots. There is a large crates, 4 large crates, 8 barrels, and 12 small crates. So they're just going to be, you know, as I say, random terrain, you know, that I can use for the improvised barricades that the defenders of the legations threw up. Pretty sure now that is all the scenery. So let's move on to books. First, some old news then. All of this stuff I've had, all these books I've had a while now, but I don't think I've ever shown them to you on any of my updates. It's mainly because I sort of started honing in on one particular set of figures or something and uploading that rather than doing a kind of general broadcast about all the things I've been up to. So these sort of fell by the wayside, but they've basically been sitting around waiting. My house is just so cluttered and untidy, and these books are all waiting to find their way onto my bookshelves, but I just can't get to the bookshelves at the moment for all the clutter in front of them, or rather the part of my bookshelves where I would want to put these, so I sort of keep them, but you know, but in subject matter and so on. So I'll just rush through them really quickly. Some of them are military history, some of them are sort of general history. Crucible of War, which is about the 7 Years' War in North America, really thick tome, got that from the Cat Protection League. So most of these, I think all but one, are charity shop. East of the Sun, I thought was quite an interesting subject. It's about the sort of Russian conquest and settlement of Siberia. I think I got that from Oxfam. Robert Kershaw's book 24 Hours at Waterloo. Now I got this because I've got his more recent book on the 24 hours at Balaclava, at Balaclava, and was really impressed by that. So I thought I would buy this on the Napoleonic Wars. Trying to remember the charity shop. It was the one I go to in Plimpton. I think is it Cardiac? Forget what they call themselves now. I think, yeah, forget it anyway. A charity shop. The Silk Roads by Peter Frankopan. Interested in that whole area of the steppes and so on, and leading to the east. Barbara Tuchman's August 1914. Now, thought I'd pick this up. I am interested in the First World War, but Barbara Tuchman, if you've never read it, I would highly recommend it. What's it called? A Distant Mirror? Oh, forgot. Yeah, I'll tell you in here. Because it's absolutely. A Distant Mirror. Wrote it in 1978. Sort of history of the 14th century. Wonderful book though. But anyway, I thought we'd get August 1914 by here. Not to be confused with the Solzhenitsyn title of the book of the same title. A few books on the Wars of the Roses in the Battleground series, Barnet 1471 and Battle of St Albans. and this one is a different publication, but same subjects. They must have all come from the same owner. Battle of Northampton, 1460. God's Viking, Harold Hardrada. This was in the same shop. I wish it would come back to me. I think it was Hart. And this one, I think I actually purchased this from the Naval and Military Press, but it's quite a nice history of the Battle of Britain. Lots of details in here and references and so on, including a few colour plates. ME110, ME109s, Hurricanes, Messerschmitts, more Hurricanes, Spitfires, and some colour photos and so on. Most of it's black and white, but yeah, can't remember exactly why I purchased this. I just felt like adding it, acquiring it and adding it to my collection. Right, now let's go on to the more recent couple of books that just finish off the video. Two more Osprey books then. These I purchased from the publisher. Didn't pick them up cheap or anything in charity shops or what have you. Modern African Wars, Rhodesia. Obviously, from what I showed you earlier, the reason is obvious why I purchased this. Wanted some references for painting those Fire Force Rhodesian figures. I've got a couple of the Modern African Wars series, not the entirety. I think I've got Angola and Mozambique and one other. There's a few in this series. And I also purchased from the publisher, Queen Victoria's Enemies #4. So I now have all 4 of Queen Victoria's Enemies. I've got 1, 2 and 3 already. This one I thought was worth picking up because it's got 1 plate, maybe 2, on... oh yeah, there's... again, apologies, I've forgotten his name. I think it's Darren Stanaway or something. Really promising newcomer to the YouTube scene who's been painting up. He's in New Zealand and he's been painting up some lovely Maori figures from Empress, I think they are. Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit more on the subject of YouTube in a moment. The reason I picked this one up though, it's got 1 plate on the boxes. I'll probably come back to this in a later video when I get back to showing you boxer figures that I'm painting up. But yeah, got this partly for that and partly for the sake of completion of my my obsessive sort of hoarding and collecting fever that I always have. And then finally, in the way of books, I mentioned this earlier, it looks really scruffy and dilapidated, second hand. I got this online but through a charity shop. Markings and Camouflage Systems of Luftwaffe Aircraft in World War II by Carl Rees Jr. Now this looks really scruffy and so on, but it is actually quite an authoritative text, partly because it was written a long time ago, 1962, and the author knew his subject because he was close to it, really. He was sort of, I'm not sure whether he served in the Second World War. I wonder if there's any... there's no indication of where he, whether he did have direct knowledge of markings and so on. But look at all, you know, it's just wonderful for things like modelers, showing you where, you know, where all these various badges, and this is what I was saying earlier about spinner markings. Oh, what a mistake I made with that. But yeah, you know, all these indications of where to put the various badges and emblems and so on. Lots of lovely colour plates. You know, it goes into far more, lots of detail, you know, so you can get it right. That's, you know, that's the thing. I just sort of I've been painting my aircraft really just as I felt like it, and then that whole business of trying to, you know, getting the decals that were actually specific to certain aircraft and that, and it just got me looking for a book like this. And they're quite hard to come by, and they are quite expensive. You can get them on Amazon, but you pay quite a lot for them, for this particular book. And I think I paid, I can't remember, about £12-14 something for this. So despite, you know, the state of the flyleaf, so someone's obviously had something, you know, like a flower pot or something resting on it for years. So its cover is quite damaged, but the inside of it just tells you everything you need to know. All the, you know, all the codes, all the lettering, what they meant. Fantastic. It's right, you know, up my street, this sort of book. So I'm really pleased to get this. Yeah, so I mentioned Darren Stanley, I think that was his name earlier, but I just wanted to round off this video now with a little bit of a ramble. If you've got this far, then I'm assuming, you know, that you're one of my more dedicated and loyal followers, whether you subscribe or not. But I have to say now, I am getting very disillusioned with YouTube in general. It's not going to put me off still uploading content like this, but I really am sort of getting weary of YouTube now, for a number of reasons. You know, during the Putin's invasion of the Ukraine, so it's over 2 years ago now, going on for 3. I got so annoyed with the amount of comments and things that people were putting up, and, you know, ignoring the calamity and the catastrophe that was going on in Ukraine, but, you know, still finding ways of being political on their own channels, and ignoring one of the most outrageous, you know, events that had happened in our lifetime. So I decided I wouldn't give them. I changed the stamp on my own channel, and I'll revert back to my original one when there is a happy resolution of the Ukrainian conflict, but that seems as far away as ever at the moment, despite Trump's over optimistic statements about how he would settle the war in 24 hours and all this kind of thing. But anyway, I took the comments off my channel, mainly because I didn't see why I should give those kind of people a platform on my channel to you know, to propagate their own ideas. So I haven't allowed comments on my channel for a long time now, and frankly, I don't think I'm ever going to put them back up, allow them again, regardless of what happens, because I just get sick and tired of reading comments on other people's channels along the kind of the nice vidmate, you know, bland remarks that people put up. People seem to think it's a kind of good idea to do it, but it's just filling. It's just noise. I don't really want the burden of replying to those kind of things. So I'm quite glad in one way that I don't have to trouble myself about, you know, being polite and constantly replying thanks mate to nice vid mate type of comments. But at the same time, it has restricted my communications with people who I really want to chat with. It's stopped me really making a lot of comments on their channels, partly because I think it's rude. It's rude of me to stop them commenting on my videos and then commenting on theirs. So that's the reason I don't comment on a lot of your videos nowadays. If you know, if you're aware that I don't. So that's kind of spoiled YouTube for me in a way, but I as I say, I've got disillusioned with it in so many other ways. I'm still hearing, you know, people. There was one a couple of weeks ago, someone talking about COVID and how, you know, he thought the whole lockdown thing was a conspiracy, even though he had COVID himself. He still thought it was a conspiracy. It just bugs me so much, and you know, lots of other things as well. So all the old, a lot of the old fraternity of wargaming. My channel isn't specifically a wargaming channel, but that's another thing. That's another issue that I'm under this sort of constant pressure that I don't feel it so much nowadays because I don't allow comments, but people sort of insisting that I specialise in one thing. You know, there are plenty of other channels out there that do have a broad scope of content. Don't just hone in on wargaming. You know, wargaming isn't my sole interest, and I don't want to create, you know, multiple channels to cover all my other issues. It bugs me that I haven't put one up in a while now, but I do intend to start getting out and filming ships again. I mean, one of the things that was a problem was my foot was playing me up so much, and that's slowly being resolving now. So I can walk further distances and I can get along the coast and so on and out to the strategic spots where I can get good views of ships. But some of my content, you know, in regard to ships has been, I don't know what the word is. I mean, not nicked. You know, I don't mind people putting my, you know, my footage up on their channels, but if you look at what, you know, I get notifications from YouTube, you know, that so and so has put up this video, and 80% of his video is your video. You know, do you want to complain or anything like that? It doesn't worry me. I don't mind people doing that. But what really bugs me is when you look at the views that they get. My view, you know, I'm lucky if I get 100 views on some of my ship videos. Some of them have got a lot more than that. One of them's up to about 8,000. But this guy, he's taking my content and he's getting like 40, 50,000 views. It really frustrates and irritates me, you know, because I want to put things up that people want to see and want to watch, but I'd much rather they watched it on my channel than on his. So that bugs me. I mean, for instance, a lot of it must be to do with giving things the appropriate titles and using sort of almost like clickbait thumbnails and so on. But I went on a boat tour when some family were in Plymouth on a rainy day. We just took the boat on the local tourist tour down to have a look at the dockyard in Plymouth, and all I did was point my camera over the side of the boat and film things as they went past. They weren't set up in anywhere near the care that I take when I actually go out to purposely film ships. That got so far it's got over 3,500 views, and it must just be because I put Devonport Dockyard in the title or something like that. I don't know. Um, I'm not sort of striving to get subscribers. I'm not striving to get views, but it's really frustrating for me when I put things out and they're not noticed, especially if I do put effort into it. So that bugs me. It's sad that a lot of the old wargaming community seem to be, fading away. I mean, there's been a few people who have sadly passed away. There's also a few people that I suspect are now too ill to have the energy or the strength and the willpower to put videos out, so they don't seem to be broadcasting any longer. So other people just seem, to have randomly disappeared, or their content has diminished markedly. But it means that there's not so much for me to watch on YouTube now. I mean, there are other channels that I'm picking up on, like this Darren Stanaway. There are other channels beginning, newcomers who, I like to watch their content, and it's the sort of content I like. I like to watch things that aren't, jazzed up and over, glorified with jingles and flashy graphics and all that kind of thing. I'm going off a lot of the channels that have become successful because they're partly become successful for that reason. They're overdone, overblown. I much prefer the more amateur friendly, kind of presentation styles. So there's a few notable, big hitters in the wargaming YouTube community that I've been unsubscribing to recently, simply because I'm finding their content it's becoming a bit wearisome. Really, I don't like the way they they're constantly presenting the new things out, type of videos, latest releases type things, because they're not actually reviewing them with any great insight. They're just showing them because they're out. They were released last week, so they want to be the first person out there to show the YouTube audience that they've got them. And they frequently say how great they are, when in fact, they turn out to be not that great. All these things that fade away, like What a Cowboy. I was really interested in acquiring that because I was comparing lots of different Western war games. Rules. You don't hear of it now. When it first came out, it was all over YouTube. All these influencers were buying it, playing it, waving the book in front of you. You just don't hear of it now, and I suspect it's probably because it's not a very good game. I've got it, but I still haven't even played it, let alone reviewed it. I'm really annoyed now. I'm still painting up the War Games Atlantic boxes, but my impression of them dwindles every time I put a paintbrush on them. I just think they're totally or well, they're not awful figures. They're just not suitable for anything I want or need. They just don't do. I'd much rather have metal figures, and I think I said with the Osprey, but I'm going to talk about that a bit more in a later video. But all these things, I'm just not watching YouTube really. I have it. I'm constantly, looking at it, seeing if someone's put a video up. The person who seems to be the most prolific, despite having a very busy work schedule and busy life in general, is my mate David at Zen Miniature Painting. He's often puts up little updates, and really love to watch those. But there's hardly anything like that on YouTube now. With people like Terry Crick and Andy Mack and a number of others. Even Ian at Bucko's Piffle, he puts up things occasionally, but they're not putting up enough for me to be able to find enough to watch while I'm painting. So it's not vain of me, but I watch my own videos now most of the time. I watch this sort of thing because it goes on long enough for me to be able to sit and concentrate on painting some figures for an hour or so. So I put that on in the background now. It seems a bit sort of narcissistic of me, but it's not. It's just I want to be in the zone of wargaming, and it helps me with that while I'm painting. So I'm only putting this on at the end of the video because it's gonna reach the sort of people that I want to communicate with, who are the sort of people who will watch long videos and watch my channel, and it's a very small Venn diagram, really small part of a Venn diagram. The other thing that I've been doing recently as well, which is kind of relevant to this, and I'll wind up with, is my television broke down. It had been breaking down for quite a while. Finally, it became unwatchable about a month ago. The image wasn't that good anyway. It had a lot of lines across the top of it and so on, but the colour on it just went psychedelic. Everything became purple and yellow. Really awful trying to watch it. So I had to get a new television, but in the interval, while I was waiting on new television, I'd find things to do in the evening, and I started playing a war game, not a war game, a naval game, strategy game on Steam. And you may have seen some videos. I put up footage of it. A similar thing in a way. It never gets a good view or number of views on my channel, but you see similar content getting tens of thousands of views on dedicated gaming channels and so on. So it's obviously to do with my the way I approach YouTube that it's not getting it. But I have enjoyed this game so much. I'm really addicted to it. I'm up until 3 o'clock in the morning playing it. Really love it. It's a perfect game for me because it's full of detail, full of complexity. Actually takes some amount of practice and study, to learn what all the various weaponry does, what's certain aircraft are used for, what ships are best at doing. It's very accurate in that respect, and it's also really absorbing, really immersive. You can micromanage it, or you can let the various items in the game do have a certain amount of intelligence of their own. So you can let them do their own thing if you want, and just sit back and watch. Why more computer games can't be like it, I don't know. The mechanics of it would work really well for other types of, like the Battle of Britain, for instance. It would be, if Triassic Games who make this, it's called Sea Power, make this, make other games along the same lines or using the same mechanics, they'd just be absolutely brilliant. It's got me hooked completely. But anyway, I've given up. I'm giving up trying to promote the game on my own channel now, but I have made a little 4-minute video just with clips from the gameplay, which I'll show you now. So as an added bonus feature, if you want to watch it at the end of this very long video, and you've stuck it out so far, and you are the sort of person that's interested, just give this another 4 minutes to watch this, and it will give you some impression of the level of detail in this game and the cinematic quality of the graphics and so on. Just wonderful. So I'll stop there. Don't worry, I'm still going to be producing material. I should have another Wargaming update for you fairly soon, because there's quite a lot of things coming to the final stages on my painting desk at the moment, so I should have something fresh to put up soon. Thanks for watching, and enjoy this little extra on Sea Power, the computer game. Bye for now.
Contact faded. Track 7114. Hit track 7014. 7, 1, 4, 7 is history.